reading out of Lord of the Horizon. It's the continued story of Ra-Ab, who was part of the Eyes of Horus, which was a rebellion group who defeated Set. He is the nomarch of the Oryx. There's 18 nomarchs in Egypt in those days. It's ancient Egypt. And this is a far memory book by Joan Marshall Grant, and we are now in chapter 10, entitled Sanctuary. For the fifth evening in succession, Amenemhet, that's Ra-Ab's son, had taken me down to see whether his puppy was old enough to leave its mother. Both Mary and I had assured him that at least another 20 days must pass before it could sleep in his room, but he found it very difficult to be patient. "You're sure that he's not ready yet?" asked Amenemhet anxiously. "He looks much bigger than he did yesterday, and, see, his eyes are open." He picked up the puppy and held it carefully in his arms. The bitch wanted him, a little worried, and thumped the straw with her tail when at last the puppy was returned to her. "You will have to go back to the house now," I said, "or Niam will scold us both." "Couldn't she wait just a little longer, just long enough for us to see if the new calves are all right? Or while we have a short paddle in the water channel?" No doubt Niam would have had to wait if a servant had not come to tell me that the overseer of a town on the southern boundary asked for permission to speak with me. Take him to the room of seals, where I will join him, and see that he has everything he requires." I turned to Amenemhet. "So, we shall both have to go, you to bed and I to work. What has the man come to see you about?" "I don't know yet. Climb up on my shoulders and I will give you a ride back to the house." He wrapped his legs around my neck and clutched my hair with both hands. Today he decided that instead of being a cow plodding patiently along, I was to be a very fierce galloping lion, which would be sure to throw him off if he didn't hold on very tightly. When I put him down at the entrance in his own room, he asked again, "What does the man want to see you about?" "I still don't know, but if it's exciting, I'll come and tell you about it before you go to sleep. If it's a long and dull kind of thing, I shan't be able to come, and Mother will say good night to both of you for both of us." He hugged me, and then he trotted to find Niam. The overseer was a man in whose house Mary and I had spent a night only 3 months previously. He had given admirable decisions on various points of administration, so I was rather surprised that he had made this sudden journey unannounced. After we had exchanged greetings, I asked, "I hope that you are not the bearer of bad news. But if the news be bad, then let me hear it, for a burden is less heavy when 2 men carry it." "It is neither good nor bad." "Yet it was sufficiently important for you to come to see me?" "It seems so. I had to make a decision, which I did not feel justified in giving without first consulting you, for the case does not come within the framework of the ordinary laws which I administer. Now, there are only 3 people whom the decision will affect, yet tomorrow there may be more, and again tomorrow. If someone has broken the laws and you were undecided what sentence to impose, why did you not send them to my audience?" "Because you told me that all questions affecting a change of policy must be brought to you. 3 days ago, 2 men and a woman crossed our boundary and were brought to me by a farmer who had found them hiding in his straw stack. By their clothes you could see they had been banished from their nome, and though at first they lied, when they realized that he was friendly towards them, they told him their story. They came from the leopard, but the nomarch, using the new authority recently given by Pharaoh, had decreed their banishment from Egypt. According to the law, he had given them the token which authorizes the headman of any village through which they pass to give them sufficient food for a day's journey, provided that they cross the boundary out of Egypt within 40 days. They appealed to me for sanctuary, saying that they had been denied their right of appeal to Pharaoh, and that, though they deserved some punishment, they were not unworthy to live in Egypt. They asked to be allowed to undergo such retribution for their crimes as you consider fitting, and then to be given the chance to prove themselves worthy to live in the Oryx. Is it your wish that their petition be granted, or that the decision of the leopard be upheld? If the leopard decreed banishment from Egypt, he exceeded the exact wordings of the new law. The nomarchs have been granted the right to banish from their own nomes. That this, in fact, may mean banishment from Egypt may have been taken for granted, but it was not specifically stated. What had these people done? One of the men is a thief, though his theft need have caused no injury. He borrowed the bull of his neighbor, without asking that this favor be granted and without offering payment. The neighbor claimed that the calf subsequently born belonged to him, but when he tried to take the calf by force, this man, Benna, set about the owner of the bull with his fists and knocked out 3 of his front teeth. The other man, Rus, was a friend and kinsman of Benna's, and when he heard that the owner of the bull, who was also the headman of the village, had ordered Benna to be taken before the nomarch, he set fire to the headman's rig. The bull, frightened by the smell of fire, broke its tether, and galloping away in terror, fell into a deep irrigation ditch, and injured himself so seriously that it had to be killed. Frightened by what he had done, Rus drank a great quantity of new mead, and then went roaring down the village street, shouting for anyone to fight him, and reviling as cowards all who refused his challenge. He got his fight, too. Most of the village joined in. 3 men had broken bones, and 1 was unlucky in a wrestling throw and broke his neck. They were convicted of theft, felony, fire-raising, and disturbing other men's peace. They were lucky that murder was not added to the list of their crimes. And what had the woman done? It appears that she is the sister of one man and the wife of the other. When she heard that they were to be sent into exile, she went to the chief city and demanded the right of audience with the nomarch. He had to grant it to her. To refuse would have been to break the law. It was a crowded audience that day, and one of the eyes of Pharaoh was the guest of the leopard, who was, no doubt, specially anxious that all should go smoothly. The woman began by being courteous, pleading that the decree of exile had been made without full knowledge of the facts and should be reconsidered. Her plea was refused, and it seems that her tongue is as agile as an eel and says like hot copper. She called the leopard most of the 18 malodorous names, and was just beginning on a detailed and most pungent criticism of his ancestors when the guards dragged her away. The overseer beamed. From the little I know of the leopard, he added appreciatively, he is not a man to carry off such a scene with dignity. He has inherited from his grandfather a tendency to fatness without also inheriting the humor necessary as a compensation. Before replying, I poured wine for the overseer and myself. Your story deserves this vintage to accompany it, I said, yet it appears unfinished, for you have made no mention of the sentence imposed on the headman for being so grudging over the services of his bull, nor have you mentioned what judgment was given to those who accepted Ru's drunken challenge. Surely the whole village did not need to defend itself from one man, and they should have remembered that the roarings of a drunkard ought to arouse the same compassion as the cries of a baby whose belly is distended with wind, both being childish afflictions with those of us who are more mature should do our best to relieve. As for the leopard, being alone together and both men of discretion, it is not improper for me to discuss a fellow nomarch. Had the leopard been wiser in his choice of a headman, for surely to be a good neighbor is the first quality necessary in a headman, he would not have found himself discomforted before his distinguished guest. I think that Amenemhet will enjoy the story when it is brought to the royal ear. Then it was right to come to you? How could you think otherwise, without crediting me with less wisdom than the leopard? And I am to let them stay? Certainly, if that be their wish after the laws under which we live have been explained to them. Should they agree to accept our authority, then they may settle here, and may they flourish. To what caste do they belong? The men are both husbandmen, and the woman has a special skill in caring for bees. Now that I'm bringing new fields into cultivation, I can find work for them on my personal estate. You still look worried. Don't you consider they deserve a second chance? I do, but in giving it to them, you will establish a precedent. May not the new authority given to the nomarchs often be abused? It is more difficult to cure people than to send them away. Other nomarchs may not be willing to take outcasts into their nomes. News of Hotep Ra travelled through Egypt before the dawn, and again the news of sanctuary will spread. Those who have been misjudged will amply repay us with their loyalty. But what of those who were not misjudged? In time you may find the dregs of Egypt here. Have you forgotten that I also am a nomarch? If I find that they do not deserve a second chance, then they shall go, and I shall see that they are sent beyond the boundaries, not only of Egypt, but beyond those lands which pay tribute to Pharaoh. They can go on one of the barges which take grain to the land of gold. It will be a great risk. Not to take it would be become like the beggar who saw a gold bead lying in the mud and starved because he dared not pick it up in case he got his fingers dirty. Smile, man, and have another cup of wine in which to drink to a new Hotep Ra. So that was chapter 10. The giving sanctuary was called Sanctuary, and the next one is entitled 11, Trampled Vineyard. Have a lovely Tuesday.